Chapter 21, 1, Gravedigger Tower. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After several seconds, Apophis's party arrived. As instanced zones, dungeons were totally independent micro-spaces that were seen as spatial anomalies by NPCs. Only players could cross the portals safely, in fact. All NPCs who tried to enter were immediately reduced to ash. System: You've entered the dungeon LVL 510, Gravedigger Tower, on Nightmare difficulty. The place was very peculiar, a totally dead and icy planet. Some vegetation had once existed, but it had been fossilized for centuries. Some kilometers in the distance, Apophis could see a black stone tower rising up, looking like the Tower of Babel. Caesar was shocked. On the lower difficulty he'd already beaten, the dungeon had taken place on a radiant planet, full of vegetation. In nightmare mode, that same planet was dead. Its atmosphere was cold and cynical, looking more like a horror movie than anything. The party began to walk towards the tower, but soon saw huge, faceless, black, and motionless men in the distance. In Apophis's former life, players had called these unidentifiable figures specters. Peculiarly, they appeared in all nightmare difficulty dungeons, but not in lower difficulties. Many theories had circulated about the explanation for their mysterious presence. Some claimed that these men had been trapped in the space rift for thousands of years, while others thought they were evil gods simply there to enjoy the show. No one ever found a concrete answer why the specters appeared in each dungeon. Apophis wondered if they also appeared in Iron Man mode, but only 5 people in his previous life could have answered that question, and they never did. As it happened, all players who failed to complete the Iron Man difficulty had every memory of the dungeon wiped from their minds. There was some discussion in the party about what the specter might be, but of course, no one settled on an explanation, and the party avoided the specter as they approached the tower. However, Apophis soon saw a group of monsters they wouldn't simply be able to avoid. They were alien creatures with 6 legs and 2 arms like meat cutters. Apophis inspected one of the creatures. Zerg, Elite, Level 15, Rank E, Hostile, everyone sighed. Hulk said, I think our chances are ruined. Not only are they 10 levels higher than us, but they're also elite creatures. Everyone nodded, except for Apophis and Caesar. They're melee creatures, said Apophis, so we can manage them with aggro. I'll team up with White to create some heavy-ranged DPS. That will draw the creatures in my direction. Once they've almost come into melee range, you and Caesar can draw away the aggro. It was a risky plan. If Apophis died before Hulk could divert the aggro back onto himself, the group would be finished. But everyone trusted Apophis, and he was confident they could succeed. Apophis moved into position and entered a fighting stance. He drew 2 lines of flame 30 meters apart, then threw a huge fireball at the Zerg group. Meanwhile, White took careful aim and began firing her heavy rifle. The fireball exploded in a huge AoE, hitting all Zergs within 5 meters of the impact. All the hit enemies immediately suffered a fire dot that Caesar knew quite well. Enraged, the Zergs scurried towards Apophis. They stayed between the 2 lines of flames, just as Apophis had planned. He made a hand gesture, summoning hundreds of fireballs from the lines of flame to pelt the Zergs. Meanwhile, White was focusing one heavy shot after another on a single Zerg, who quickly died. Zerg killed. Gain 5,789 EXP. Their plan was brutally effective, and more than a dozen Zergs quickly died before they managed to get within a range to threaten Apophis and White with their vicious melee attacks. At this point, Hulk and Caesar leaped forward to engage the remaining Zergs and keep them away from the ranged DPS duo. Caesar skillfully drew aggro away from Apophis and White but then backed off his skill usage for a few moments, allowing Hulk to pull all the aggro onto himself. Once the tank had a solid grip on the whole party's aggro, the 3 DPS players brutally slaughtered one Zerg at a time. And of course, Chocolate was healing them the whole time. Not a single player went down during the encounter. After 2 minutes of fighting, the last Zerg was dead. Apophis received a notification. Level 8 achieved, gain 5 skill points for the talent tree. Everyone in the party applauded. Reaching this level was quite a feat. I never thought your crazy plan had a chance of working, said White, but you've proved me wrong. Thank you very much. Chocolate spoke up. Thank you very much, Big Brother. Hulk thanked him, too. Among them, only Caesar didn't say a word. He knew that Apophis was still hiding some of his power. He hadn't even used the now famous technique which he'd used to defeat him. The pathway to the tower was now open, and the party continued on. Chapter 22, 2, Gravedigger Tower. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Apophis's party spent the next several hours clearing the tower floor by floor. Eventually, they stopped to take a rest, and Apophis looked at his available skill points. Apophis was still LVL 8, so he had 10 skill points available. Rather than invest these points in the talent tree, he decided to evolve his skill Chaos Flame to a new, even more powerful form. He clicked Upgrade, then inspected the new skill. Skill, Esper, Rare, Tier 1, Name. Demon God Flame Skill Summary. An ember of the flames wielded by the demon god. Very beautiful, but extremely dangerous. Your flames are much harder to extinguish. 300% more fire damage. This skill can be upgraded for 50 talent points. Meanwhile, outside the dungeon, the video of the fight between Apophis and Caesar was making the rounds of social networks. Seeing their incredible power boosted the motivation of many people who had not reached LVL 5, making them eager to reach this level of power for themselves. As it happened, the fastest way to gain experience with firearms was to kill NPCs. However, there were no longer many easily accessible areas where players could freely hunt NPCs anymore. Most big cities were in the hands of player guilds, which protected NPCs in exchange for taxes. The only location which hadn't been overrun by players, one way or another, was Taio, the planetary capital of the Republic. With this in mind, several 100,000 players organized themselves into a raid and prepared to attack the capital. On the forums, conversation quickly shifted from the duel of the Titans to this new raid. Soon, everyone was talking about it. Because of the huge scale, there was no actual leadership in the raid. It was more of a mob than anything. In the media, many commentators were discussing this event with fascination. It would surely result in the end of the Taio Republic. The question on everyone's mind was, will this impact the game in a positive or negative way? Apophis's party finally ended their break and realized that it was time for them to face the dungeon boss. They prepared themselves to the best of their abilities, then entered the boss room. Suddenly, a golden, humanoid spirit manifested before them. Everyone stood there in awe, gawking at her incredible aura of divinity. Apophis inspected the figure. To his unease, he was not familiar with this being. It was new to this second life. LVL 250, Tier S, Hostility. That tier, and the mysterious way its information was hidden. This was surely one of the most powerful entities in the galaxy. After a few moments, the entity spoke. Hello my children. I am the goddess Varda Elantari, one of the protective deities of the universe. The monster you are about to face is an abomination created by a malevolent god. I cannot, unfortunately, intervene directly without creating an open conflict with this god. I thus charge you to eliminate this creature. Yet, be most careful. This creature bears one aspect of its creator's power, the capacity to corrupt living souls. Quest notification. Purification of Infamy, Secret Quest, Grade 510, Difficulty X, Summary. Goddess Varda Elantari asked you to eliminate the creation of a malevolent god, a monster with the power to corrupt your living soul. Objective. Eliminate the dungeon boss on your first attempt and without any party member dying. Reward. Gain 100,000 CG, 50 skill points, and your choice of unique passive skill. Failure penalty. Lose the ability to gain EXP for 30 days, and lose the ability to befriend NPCs of good alignment. Everyone stared at the goddess in shock. A quest of difficulty X. The potential gains were insane, but compared to the penalty for failure. In the end, everyone wanted to give up, except Apophis. Chapter 23, 3, Gravedigger Tower. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Apophis and Caesar remained silent while the other three members of the party debated heatedly about whether to accept the quest offered by the goddess Varda Elantari. I think we agree, said White, that the penalty for failure is much worse than the reward for winning. Hulk nodded. Even though the unique skill reward would surely be a mega-powerful upgrade. If you fail, you lose everything. I agree with White. Chocolate seemed to agree, too. Caesar opened his mouth to reply to them. Apophis clicked accept. He was the leader of the group, after all. Everyone looked shocked as they received the notification of quest accepted. They looked like Apophis had done something wrong. Even Caesar felt annoyed, but said nothing. He'd agreed to follow Apophis's leadership, and so he'd follow, even if the penalty for failure was far greater in scope than Caesar had predicted. Hopefully, it would all turn out for the best. The party had managed to clean up all the floors of the dungeon tower, after all. Apophis had proved himself to be a good leader thus far. But White shouted out, her voice full of anger. Are you serious? Why'd you make such a big decision unilaterally? It's not just a resurrection penalty that lasts an hour. If we fail, we lose a whole month of progress. Give me an explanation immediately. On the other hand, the Hulk says the same thing. Are you fucking serious, man? You accept a quest that will impact our character, without consulting us. We'll have to kick your ass for what you just did. Apophis answered. Look, this is a unique level X quest. It might be the only quest of this rank you see in your whole life. We're the first team to try a nightmare dungeon, remember. You really want to play it safe just because you're afraid of losing a LVL 7 character. You agreed to follow my direction, so follow. Anyway, I'm certain we'll be able to beat this quest, despite its difficulty. Caesar finally spoke up. How can you know all this, Apophis? The game's only been out for 4 days, and there haven't been any substantial leaks that could tell you these details. I've been watching you since we started this dungeon. Your strategies go well beyond basic MMO tactics. You've known the AI of every encounter in a way only a practiced speedrunner could, and that spiritual skeleton of yours is far more powerful than any other skill I've seen so early in the game. Apophis was caught off guard, but Caesar's words sparked an idea. Well, I had access to a leak that didn't go public. Trust me, I know this quest, and I know we can beat it. Once we do, it'll all be worth the difficulty. Apophis had lied. This was a new quest, even for him. Yet, it seemed to make sense to the rest of the party. Now he had to act quickly before anyone could raise another question and expose his lie. Apophis had held on to the skill books he'd acquired from the Zetark facilities, and he now spread them, 8 in total, on the ground between the party members. These are for you, he said. In the short term, losing the books meant losing an immense amount of money, at least several million GC, he estimated. Yet, the potential gain would far eclipse that in the long term. Despite themselves, the party's morale rose significantly at the sight of such rare and powerful skills. There were no more complaints. Once everyone had learned their new skills, the 5 players set off for the last floor of the dungeon called Gravedigger Tower. Chapter 24, 4, Gravedigger Tower. You are listening at novelfull.audio. They arrived in front of a huge, 10-meter high door. No one was making any noise, but was extremely focused. They still resented Apophis for his decision, but had decided to give the fight their full effort, anyway. At this point, it was victory or death. Apophis stepped forward and opened the door. A huge room opened before them, one about 500 square meters in area and about 10 meters high. Surprisingly, it appeared to be a luxurious suite, but its occupants were not immediately visible. However, as the team carefully advanced, Apophis noticed a figure standing, looking out one of the huge windows in the suite. Apophis moved closer and saw that it was a humanoid with his back turned to the party, hands behind his back, observing the eclipse, which was visible through the windows. Sudden realization came to Apophis. It was a Zetarch. Lord Enel, boss, level 200, rank A+, Apophis's heart sank. This was too much. They had no chance of defeating this boss. The A+ rank meant that the boss had not ascended to godhood and was still mortal, but the difference in power was obscene. The difference in power between Apophis's E rank and the boss was a power ratio of 1 to 100 million. Because, of course, rank was far more important of a measure of power than level. Apophis summoned every drop of his courage and signaled for the group to stay back. Then he stepped forward, resting only a few meters from Lord Enel. Thanks to his extensive recent reading, he knew how to speak Zetarch perfectly. Using his knowledge of the Zetarch Empire's culture, he spoke with great respect and restraint. "Good morning, Lord Enel." He punctuated his words with a respectful bow. Lord Enel turned around. "So it is you that I must eliminate." "Of course not," said Apophis. "I'm a friend of the Empire. I'm even known by my title of Savior of the Zetarch." Lord Enel thought about this. "I believe you, for you respect our customs to the letter. Yet, that doesn't change the fact that I must eliminate you for the glory of the Emperor and the Empire." "My lord," Apophis retorted, "I regret to tell you that the Zetarch Empire fell more than 1,000 years ago. Only one member of your species is still alive, Princess Antanria, whom I rescued 3 days ago from a life support capsule." Lord Enel was confused. "What date in the stellar calendar is it?" "January 28, 7099. "It seems that you've been stuck here for more than 1,000 years, my lord." Lord Enel, confused, tried to understand. He tried to sift through his memories. Apophis continued. "We have been sent here by goddess Varda Elantari, for your souls have been corrupted by a malevolent god. My allies and I are here to cleanse you, not fight you." As he spoke, Apophis suddenly realized something. The young Zetarch he had saved possessed almost the same name as the goddess in the Zetarch language. Was the princess simply named after the goddess, as in some real-world religions? True, the Zetarch tongue was an extremely complex language with a wealth of words, and each phoneme had a special meaning. But still, might there be a deeper connection between these two women? Lord Enel was in great pain. This revelation was nearly impossible to believe, but deep down, he knew that it must be true. Just as he was about to speak, Lord Enel collapsed, screaming in pain, touching his head. A powerful voice came from the void, speaking with grim authority. "How dare you resist your master, you miserable mortal?" After a few moments, the screaming stopped. Lord Enel stood up, his limbs lurching in a disturbing way, a blank look on his face. Apophis inspected the boss again. "Ener, puppet lord, boss, level 20, rank C. Well, that was much easier to deal with." Apophis yelled to the other party members, who were still stunned by what they'd just seen, to immediately get into fighting positions. The hardest fight of their lives was about to begin. Chapter 25, 5, Gravedigger Tower. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Hulk immediately leaped into a defensive position in front of the group. Avoiding the beam, Apophis and White stepped to the sides and launched ranged attacks. Apophis's flame powers grew hotter and hotter, melting everything in their path. Lord Enel started firing smaller beams at them, preventing Apophis and White from easily counter-attacking. They both began moving quickly, alternating between attacking and dodging. Caesar and Hulk raced across the room, moving into melee range with Lord Enel. Caesar used Light Push, the same ability he'd used against Apophis in their duel. At first, it looked like the boss would resist the effect. But the Light Push worked, not only dealing damage but also applying the stoned debuff against the boss, reducing his movement speed by 90%. While Lord Enel struggled to deal with the melee combatants, White and Apophis took advantage of the opening in his defenses and unleashed all their firepower. Lord Enel raised an energy shield which exploded, releasing a huge shock wave. Chocolate immediately went to work trying to heal Caesar and Hulk, but it was difficult. Hulk had already lost a lot of HP as their tank, and the last shock wave had come close to killing him. White asked Apophis to protect her, then started preparing her most powerful technique. It would be amazing if it hit, but took a long time to summon. Meanwhile, Caesar took advantage of the Hulk's aggro, inflicting a lot of damage in melee. Of course, the boss was far from passive. Hulk came dangerously close to dying several times, his HP reaching as low as 5%. Fortunately, Chocolate had a real talent for healing. Every time he was brought low, she raised him back up again. The Chocolate-Hulk duo was solid, but couldn't last forever. Chocolate's energy declined quickly. Caesar was doing his best to debuff Lord Enel, rather than simply dealing damage. His Light Push could stun the boss, but only for a few seconds at a time. Caesar had a couple other tricks up his sleeve, of course. He used Unstoppable and Stroke of Steel, allowing Chocolate to regain some of her energy while the boss was suppressed. Apophis released all his remaining power, transforming the room into a huge inferno. It was so hot that even the stone walls started to melt. White grinned, finally unleashing the skill she'd been charging this whole time. Her critical bleeding dropped a dot on the boss so heavy that it overcame his natural regeneration. Taking advantage of this, the three DPSs chained all their offensive abilities off cooldown until Lord Enel was down to 30% of his maximum HP. Then 20%. At 10%, Chocolate's energy was finally exhausted. She couldn't heal anyone anymore, and the rest of the team felt the pressure. That, of course, meant that Hulk would surely die in the next attack that the boss was aiming at him, and they would all lose the quest. Apophis's heart sank as he realized they had come so close, only to lose it all. But Caesar decided now was the time to unleash a legendary skill he had hidden until now. He used Thor's shot, an attack so mighty that it knocked down Lord Enel and shattered the stone floor that had already been weakened by Apophis's flames. Everyone fell down to the lower floor, all their resources exhausted. The boss lay on the ground. He didn't move any longer. Hulk finally sat up, laughing with excitement and raising his arms high in the air. "Fuck yeah, we won. We really did it." Everyone burst out laughing, an incredible explosion of power burst from the ground. Lord Enel stood up, red-black life energy crackling around his body. "You deceived me, Apophis," he screamed in pain. "You're the gravedigger of the Zetarch, not their savior. Die. Flee immediately." Apophis shouted. Apophis used his slight remaining energy to summon Susanoo and hold back the boss. The impact between Lord Enel and Apophis caused a huge shock wave, throwing the other team members in a wide circle. Apophis stared in disbelief as Lord Enel restored 10% of his HP in this final phase. Apophis combined Susanoo and Flame Lord, cloaking himself with chaos flames as well as the spiritual skeleton. White, who had taken cover, started making basic weapon attacks again. The other three team members tried to gather as much energy as possible while Apophis held the boss at bay. The spiritual skeleton landed a flaming stab on the boss, blowing him out of the tower completely. Lord Enel plummeted, consumed with flames, still screaming in agony. Then he landed, crashing on the ground at the base of the tower among the corpses of the other enemies the party had already killed. Server. Congratulations to the group of players, Apophis, who have completed the dungeon, Gravedigger Tower, in Nightmare mode for the first time. Server. Congratulations to the party led by the player, Apophis, for being the first to clear the dungeon, Gravedigger Tower, on Nightmare difficulty. A reward of 2 levels, 20 skill points, and a +5 boost to all primary attributes has been awarded to each member of the party. In addition, an engraved monument with their names will be installed in front of the dungeon. Server. The boss, Lord Enel, will no longer be available, replaced by Zerg Queen. Ironman difficulty can now be attempted by all players. Warning. Failure to complete a dungeon on Ironman difficulty will result in the permanent deletion of your character. Server. All dungeons on the planet Terra are now unlocked. Chapter 26, 6, Gravedigger Tower. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Level 10 achieved. Gain 5 skill points for the talent tree. Apophis collapsed. Everyone thought the boss had hurt him, or even killed him with the final blow. Chocolate rushed towards him and cast a healing spell. Apophis stood up. Wow, that was close. My HP almost went below 99%. His joke diffused the tense atmosphere, and everyone cheered. Finally, it was done. The boss was dead, and they were all alive. Caesar reached out his hand to help Apophis up. Don't pat yourself on the back too much. Looks to me like the boss bugged out and threw himself out the window. Once everyone had recovered from the intense fight, the team descended the tower, coming at last to the boss's corpse. Now it was time to share the loot. In Horus, most monsters only gave EXP when they died. Only bosses and NPCs could be counted on to drop items. The loot was excellent, as the game gave huge bonuses to the first clears of Nightmare dungeons. There were 15 items in total. 8 rare items, 5 epic items, and 2 legendary items. Of the lot, only 2 interested Apophis. Zetarch Nobility Uniform, Complete Power Armor, Esper, Epic, Item Summary. Uniform worn by the Zetarch Nobility during war. Reinforces the user's own energy reserves with cosmic energy. Increases your base energy by 50%. Your energy recharges 30% faster while in combat. God Sencha's Rings of Power, Ring, Esper, Legendary, Item Summary. The Power Ring of Lord Enel, bestowed by the god Sench himself. After its owner's defeat, its dark control effect was broken, but vestiges of it still remain. Corrupts all your spells and skills with dark energy and gradually shifts your alignment toward evil. Grants access to the unique, Sench, talent tree. Increases all your skills by 1 level. It was exceptional loot for their point in the game. Everyone was delighted, especially White, who happily claimed epic armor and the legendary weapon called Bow of the God Sench. Of course, the party had 2 espers. Apophis and Chocolate. Since Apophis didn't think he had enough money simply to give Chocolate what her share of the esper items were worth, Apophis decided to rely on the loot distribution mechanic. It was a simple system. When an item dropped in a party, everyone could choose to select either Need, Greed, or Pass. The item would be randomly distributed between everyone who didn't select Pass, with a much higher bias towards those who had selected Need. Apophis clicked on Need for these 2 items. And Chocolate chose Greed. I might miss the opportunity for 2 extremely powerful items, she said, but it's without a doubt thanks to you that I could beat a Nightmare dungeon in the first place. Without you, I'd never have succeeded at an X-rank quest, so thank you very much. Only, promise to call me if you want to do another dungeon. Apophis smiled as both items were granted to him. I don't know what to say, except, thank you. Caesar spoke up. Honestly, I didn't think we had a chance. I only followed along because of our contract. But you've shown me that the will always triumphs. The Renovatio Imperii Guild is wide open to you, my friend, and if you ever need help, wherever you are, I'll be there. This rush of treasure, levels, skills, and new allies made Apophis feel like he had quite a comfortable lead over most other players. Yet, unfortunately, it would quickly turn against him. Chapter 27 The First War. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Apophis's team finally exited the dungeon, and was immediately besieged by the swarm of waiting players. Countless voices called out from the crowd. Hey Apophis, what item drops did you get? Did you guys find out anything about the main plot? Hey, big brother, can you help me out with some CG? Promise I'll pay you back. Finally, a famous personality of the MMORPG world appeared in front of Caesar and Apophis, the player, Zeus. Everyone knew Zeus. He was a renowned esports champion of PvP arenas in various MMORPGs. In Apophis's first life in Horus, Zeus became known as the strongest of the 7 gods, an incredible sniper able to annihilate a planet with a single shot, and a member of the Spartan Super Guild. Zeus spoke up, addressing Apophis and Caesar. Congratulations to both of you. This is a great accomplishment. He turned to Caesar. Legatus Caesar, since you've been in the dungeon for hours, you won't be aware of it, but the superguilds have announced their support for the siege of Tyre. Can we count on you to convince your guild to join? I know you're not the leader of Renovatio Imperii, but without your backing, the star players and guild leaders won't vote for their participation in the coalition. Of course, at this time, Apophis was the only player who knew the truth about NPC intelligence. Players hadn't realized NPCs were any more important than monsters. After all, in every other game, NPCs were about as intelligent as oysters. And, of course, if they even could be killed, they'd soon respawn as though nothing had happened. In Horus, NPC death was permanent and therefore directly influenced the story. It would not be until much later that players would begin to realize they had killed truly intelligent and conscious beings, an event which would eventually cause a worldwide scandal. But Caesar knew none of this. When he heard about a raid against NPCs, he thought nothing of it. Well, Zeus, I'll join the Imperial Council and talk with the other guild senators. I'll keep you informed, all right. Zeus wasn't satisfied with this answer, but he had an idea to spark Caesar's rivalry and turned to Apophis. And you? After all, you defeated Caesar in a duel. Therefore, you're clearly one of the best players in the game. Having you join us would be a huge morale boost for the raid. But Apophis had a lot of things to do and didn't feel like wasting time killing NPCs. The whole raid would be completely useless to him. Sorry, friend, but I have a lot of things to do. I hope we can work together next time, though. Zeus was disappointed with both refusals, but accepted them gracefully. The main lesson Apophis had learned in his previous life was that while guilds offered some benefits, the investment of time and resources they required was considerable. In fact, the more powerful you were, the less the guilds had to offer you. While the game was still young, EXP and GC were still fairly easy for players to earn, but progress would stagnate at higher levels. Belonging to a guild didn't seem important to many players initially, but it would eventually become obvious as the best way to beat content that would give the rewards players needed to progress. Of course, most of the big guilds would eventually leverage their necessity to set up a shameful and exploitative system which bound players to the guild with a multi-year contract. They would also be required to give 10% of their EXP and GC earnings to the guild, which the top agents would redistribute as they saw fit. It was pure racketeering, but as the game progressed, it became harder and harder for players to advance alone. After all, this was a space exploration game. Only guilds had the resources to finance capital ships worth several billion GC, which was what was needed to get closer to the main objective of the game. Discover the center of the galaxy. Chapter 28 Royal Bastard. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Finally, it was time for Apophis's party to disperse. They exchanged contact information, both in and out of game, so they could contact each other in real life, then went their separate ways. There were only a few hours left for Apophis to finish his Save the Princess quest, but first he had to improve his character, including choosing his second evolution. Because he had reached LVL 10, this evolution would be a real power-up. The first evolution mainly existed so players could unlock classes. The second evolution was intended to allow players to ascend to a power level that would let them fight on other planets, including ones much more hostile than Gaia. He equipped himself with the 2 items he had won in the dungeon. What most players wouldn't know yet was that unique items could influence the evolution options available to them, and the tier of evolution would become extremely powerful as the global power level of Horus's threats increased. The second evolution was different from the first, which was a simple process of less than 10 minutes. The second tier took a good hour to complete and involved a lot of AI calculation, so he took refuge in a safe, high tree and selected Evolution Level 2. Calculating your evolutionary potential, please select from the available evolutionary paths. Spatian Human, Common, Tier 2. As humans naturally evolved, their biology grew accustomed to the hungry void of outer space. Corrupted Human, Rare, Tier 2. The God Sench offers paths to power which some consider to be unnatural. Zetarch, Human Hybrid, Epic, Tier 2. A fusion of Zetarch and human DNA, an organism which comes closer to achieving perfection than any other creature with human ancestry. Excellent, said Apophis, the Zetarch, human hybridization would be perfect. The Zetarch were a superior species in every way to humans, after all. Apophis had no interest in the other 2 choices. Spatian humans were the dominant and most widespread species in the United Federation of Planets, and certainly better in every way to the primitive humans, but a far cry from the other options available to Apophis. The corrupted humans weren't bad, and in fact had a good natural affinity for agility and cosmic energy. The main downside, of course, was that the majority of other species rejected corrupted humans. Their appearance revealed their loyalty to an evil god. Only the Zetarch, human hybrid was a pure power increase without any negative consequences. So, Apophis selected Zetarch, human hybrid. Evolution will complete in 1 hour, 8 minutes, and 38 seconds, that gave him some time to take a break and see if his family was still alive. He took advantage of the break to sell 100,000 GC. The ratio of GC to credits had quite improved since his first sale. Originally, 1 GC had been worth 3 credits. Now, the ratio had improved to 1 GC per 4.6 credits. Alexander put up 120,000 GC, which sold quickly for 560,000 credits. Alexander also took the opportunity to check the game's forum. Everything was about to explode. The game was gaining a staggering 1 million new players per hour and was very close to reaching 40 million total players. People were excitedly discussing many topics, such as the first team to have cleared the dungeon in nightmare mode. But above all, the most frenzied discussion surrounded the Siege of Tayo, which was looking to be one of the largest community events in the history of video games. 10 million players were already on site, 15 million other players had announced their intention to participate, and the assault was planned in 2 days. After his break was over, Alexander got back into bed with the VRI helmet on his head. His second evolution was about to complete. It was time to get serious. Chapter 29 The Dark Side. You are listening at novelfull.audio. System. Welcome to the galaxy of Horus. Your character evolution has completed. Reminder. You are currently being observed through your passive ability, Mark of a God. Ah yes. Apophis had almost forgotten about that. Upon finishing his Purification of Infamy quest, Apophis had received the 100,000 GC and 50 skill points that he'd expected. But the reward of a passive skill hadn't exactly gone as he'd expected. Rather than Apophis getting the choice of a powerful passive skill, as the quest had implied, he instead received Mark of a God. The skill description was completely useless, only informing Apophis that someone is watching you. What a scam. The other members of the party apparently got passive abilities which corresponded to different gods, but they wouldn't share their information with Apophis. He wondered if they lucked out in their passives better than him. At least the quest had rewarded him with plenty of money and skill points. Now it was time to spend the latter. Between that reward and the 2 levels he'd recently gained, Apophis had 60 skill points he could spend at once. After careful consideration, he decided to invest in a new branch of the talent tree. He chose the first skill of the mind over matter branch, telekinesis. It was infamous as one of the most difficult skills to use, since it required a ton of skill points to be really useful. At its base level, it could do little more than let you twist a spoon with your mind. He invested 10 skill points into telekinesis, then added 10 skill points into cosmic meditation. However, something peculiar happened after he finished this. System. Please wait. Your skill cosmic meditation is evolving. Skill evolution complete. Curious, Apophis opened his menu and took a look. Esper skill, dark, rare, tier 1, name. Dark Cosmic Meditation Skill Summary. Your cosmic senses have attuned to the darker energies of space. Permanently increases your maximum energy by 20%. Permanently increases your energy damage defense by 3%. Gain 1 point of darkness. Cooldown. 7 days. This skill can be upgraded for 50 talent points. The evolution of this skill was undoubtedly due to Apophis wearing the legendary ring. He opened his character interface. Name. Apophis, Guild. / Race. Zetark, Human Hybrid, Evolution LVL. 2, Next Evolution. LVL 20, Gender. Male Class. Esper LVL, 10 Rank. E+ Alignment. 1, Dark. Stats. STR, Strength. 200. Plus 10% equals 220 INT, Intelligence. 200 plus 10% equals 220 AGI, Agility. 200 plus 10% equals 220 DX, Dexterity. 200 plus 10% equals 220 Energy. 1100 plus 50% equals 1650 Luck. 1. Global Skill. Skills. Demon God Flame, Lord of Flames, Dark Cosmic Meditation, Susanoo Learning Tree, / Passive Skills. Archaeologist, Mark of a God, Inventory. Equipment. Zetark Nobility Uniform, Epic, God Sench's Rings of Power, Legendary, Complete Zetark Battle Armor, Rare, Money. 401,023 Galactic Coins Summary. You're slightly above average as far as space.farers go. You'd make good cannon fodder on the battlefield, but why on earth did you choose the darkness? Did the game just insult him? I am Apophis, the god of the dead, he shouted. Not cannon fodder, you brainless AI. Now it was time to return to Omaya. Chapter 30. Bad news. You are listening at novelfull.audio. To return to Omaya, Apophis had to go through Monstanopolis again. When he arrived near the city, he saw the same scene as the first time. A line of people blocked by a tollbooth controlled by about 30 players. Apophis really had no time to waste. He used his firebranding skill and simply threw a jesper of flames at the 30 players guarding the tollbooth. Their clothes were immediately incinerated, while the flesh began to slowly fall off their bones. And even some poor players who were waiting to pass, suffered the same fate. Apophis made no distinction, fire rained. The scene shocked many onlookers. A handsome and strangely attractive 20-year-old with silver hair simply rode through the tollbooth on his motorcycle and destroyed everything in his path. No one had the presence of mind to record the scene, and those who talked about it on the forum were quickly mocked. The story of a man. Torch avenging weaker players was great to hear, but many doubted that it really happened. After 4 hours of speeding on his motorcycle, and some GC for a full tank of gas, Apophis arrived in Omaya. The city had fallen under the control of a second-rate guild with no real importance by the name of Gold is Good. According to Apophis menu, the guild had 235 players, nothing insurmountable. The situation was much calmer than when Apophis arrived, as the Republican authorities had been chased away by the players and martial law had been lifted. It was now the Gold is Good players who were enforcing their own law. He arrived at the Zetark girl in the hospital, whom he had saved a few days ago, and injected her with his energy. Server. Congratulations on completing the S+ quest, Save the Princess. Final grade. A+. Reward. Get a friendly relationship with Princess Antanria, and gain one legendary skill of your choice for your class. A totally naked and pink woman appeared. It was the physical aspect of Cortana. She snapped her fingers, and a menu appeared and she said, "Hurry up and choose, I don't have that much to do." Apophis was amazed. He knew almost none of them. It almost seemed like every single Esper skill in the game was available to him. He wanted them all. Of course, he could only take one. The timer on top of the menu stresses it deeply. Some things need time to be enjoyable. Then he saw something amazing. The skill, Radioactive Fire. But Cortana said something that made him change his mind. System. You have accessed too much information. Please wait while Cortana erases all the memory of your last 5 minutes. Apophis opened his character menu and saw that he had the passive skill, Warrior, Esper, but he couldn't understand why he had chosen this one out of all the legendary cheat skills he had access to. It was incomprehensible. A class theoretically had an infinite number of combinations and possibilities. Why bother being a 2-class bastard? Had Cortana said something to her that influenced her? Princess Zetark Antanria finally opened her eyes and saw Apophis looking at her. "Where am I?" she asked in the Zetark language. "Who are you?" "I am Apophis," he replied. "I freed you a few days ago from a laboratory. We are currently on the planet Era in the Era Prime system, but from what I understand, you called this system Initium Prime." Apophis. "How are you feeling?" Antanria. "I feel good, but I feel like I'm in the dark." Apophis. In the dark. Antanria. "Yes, I have no memory of this last week, it's a total blur, I just remember my old life." Apophis. "And physically?" Antanria. "I'm fine, thank you." Apophis. "Well, let's go step by step. What's the last thing you remember?" Antanria. "I just remember falling asleep in my bed at the Imperial Palace. Father had come to kiss me as he used to do." Apophis. "The Emperor." Antanria. "Yes, sorry I didn't introduce myself. I name Antanria, Princess of Blood, daughter of Emperor Malekith Vi, heir to the imperial throne." Malekith 6. The last emperor. Apophis couldn't believe it. What was the probability in the billions of solar systems that make up the galaxy to fall on the heir of the only empire to have reigned there? It can't be a coincidence. Antanria. "Sorry sir, thank you for rescuing me, but can you take me back to Auralia? To the Imperial Palace, or inform the Imperial Governor of the planet that I am here?" Auralia was the former capital of the Zetark Empire, a planet in total ruin by now. Auralia was the former capital of the Zetark Empire, a planet now in total ruin. No need to hide it from him, he will be well quickly anyway. Apophis wanted to be frank. "I have bad news, Princess. The Zetark Empire has collapsed, Auralia is a ruin, and you have been kept in stasis for at least 1,000 years. I just found you in a lab a few days ago in a preservation machine. I'm so sorry." First, she was shocked, then, anger comes with tears. She says, "How dare you? The Zetark Empire is the empire of 1 billion solar systems. Every race in the galaxy owes us obedience." It began to accelerate, she became all red, she was going to make a feint. Apophis grabbed her face so that her eyes looked into his and said, "Calm you, Princess. It was a sacrilege to touch a member of the imperial family, so Antanria wanted to slap him, but Apophis caught his hand. Antanria! You bastard! How dare you touch me? You bastard of mixed blood! Apophis moved away from her for a few minutes until she calmed down, and then he said calmly. Your people are gone, there is nothing you can do to change that, you have to accept it to change that, you have to accept it, but you can still possibly find out what happened to them. And see if there are any survivors. Antanria. Survivors like you mean? Mixed blood. Apophis. I am not related to your people, it's just that my people have the ability to imitate the genetics of all the races in the universe, that's why I have the physical skills of a mixed blood Zetarch and the language I learned in various places related to the Empire. Apophis. I know this is a shock to you, so I'm going to let you run this. Antanria was totally disoriented, all of her life was in the past, but in the midst of the fear and uncertainty she felt something strangely reassuring deep inside her. It was the energy that Apophis had given her to revive her body. Antanria said. Stay, I beg you. Forgive me for my behavior. Is there anything in particular I should ask you? Apophis. Am I listening to you? Antanria. Can you hug me? Apophis was very surprised, but after reflection it was true that even if she was an aristocrat of high rank, she was above all a little girl totally lost, who had no family, no home, nothing. Apophis doesn't like to get attached to NPC, because he finds it childish, but if he can link with this Zetarch princess, he could eventually benefit in future. Apophis came forward and took her in his arms to comfort her, like a father for his daughter, while Antanria melted in tears in his arms.